Okay, we are going to do a little bit of chapter 5. Chapter 5 is on functions. Okay, so the first property of a function is that a function has a domain and a range. The domain is the input values or all the possible x values. Okay, the main thing to keep in mind is when you list them, we formally write them lowest to highest and we exclude any repeats. Okay, for the range is the output of a function and it's all the possible y values, and again we list them lowest to highest with no repeats. Okay, so one way for them to give you a function or a relation is to give you a list of ordered pairs. Okay, if I want to write the domain, remember the domain is all the possible x values. So let me first look at the x values. Remember, an ordered pair is x comma y. So if I just look at the x values, I have a 3, a 1, and a -2. When I list the domain, I often use these curly brackets. They look like this. You don't have to, but it means we're going to make a list. And I go from lowest to highest. So the lowest x value is -2. The next lowest one is 1. The next lowest is 3. Okay, and then I close it with the curly bracket. There are no repeated numbers in this list, so this is a good list. Okay, so for the range is all the possible output or the y values. So let me look at the y coordinates. Okay, I'm going to make a list using that curly thing. Okay, now it goes from lowest to highest. So the lowest y value is the 5. Next is the 7. Next is the 10. Are they lowest to highest? Yes. And there's no repeated values, so that's good. That's all I have to do to identify the domain and range. Okay, so for example, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. Domain is the input or the x values. So I'm just going to look at what I have. I have 5, 3, 3, 5. Okay, I want to go lowest to highest, and I don't want to include any repeats. Okay, so the lowest x value is 3. Oh, I have 3 and 3. Even though I have 2 3s, I'm not going to list them twice because I don't list the repeats. So 3, 3, and then I have a 5 and a 5. So my possible x values are 3 and 5. Okay, I put them lowest to highest. I didn't include the repeats, even though it looks like there's a 3, and a 5, and a 5. Okay, range is the y values. Okay, so I have a 7, an 8, and a 9. And lowest to highest, so I have 7. I have 7 again, so I don't write it again. Then I have an 8, and then I have a 9. So the domain is all the possible x values, and the range is all the possible y values. Okay, now example 3 is the same idea. It's just represented as a table, but I'm still going to list the domain and range. Domain is the inputs or the x's. So this is the ins or the x's. So the x values are the -2, the 1, and the 5. Okay, now lowest to highest, -2 is lowest, then 1, then 5, and there were no repeated values, so it was fine in terms of that. Now the output values are the y values. So I have a 4, a 7, and a 4. Okay, so my lowest is 4. I have 2 4s, but I don't want to list them even though they're repeated. So 4 and 7 are the only possible y values in this situation. Okay, now example 4, same domain range, I'm just representing it in different ways. So example 4 is a table. It doesn't tell me which one's the input or the output, but we're going to assume the first column is the x column and the second column is the y column. Okay, so in this case, these are all the x values. Okay, and when I list them, I am going to list all of them in order. I use the curly brackets. If you don't use them, it's okay. But just know that they're just saying that we're making a list. So 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and they're in order. And they are lowest to highest. No, and there's no repeats. Okay, now the range is the money. So $3, $5, $7, $9, and $11. Lowest to highest, no repeats. Done. And now let's look at example 5. It's example 5, domain and range. I just see a bunch of dots here. Okay, now I think I'm going to list the ordered pairs of each of the points to make it easier for myself, but you don't have to list the ordered pairs if you can do it without. So if I first look at this ordered pair right here, x is 1, y is 3. So the ordered pair of this is 1, 3. Okay, for this dot right here, x is 2, y is 1. Down here I have x is 3, y is -1. 3, -1. And then the last one is 4, 2. Okay, now if I just look at those ordered pairs, the domain is all the x's. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I go left to right, I can actually pick them up in order. Now the range is the y values. Y values are the second order pair. The y-axis goes low, down to up. So if I go down, I have -1, 1, 2, 3. -1, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm just going to glance at them. They look like they're lowest to highest, and I didn't list any repeated values. Okay, for the last two examples, they're going to give me a function as an equation, but they're just going to give me the domain values. They're called discrete domain values, and I'm going to plug them in to figure out what the range is. Okay, so let me first look at this problem. Example 6, it tells me y equals 2x plus 10. Next, they tell me the domain is 1, 3, 4. Now, when they tell me the domain is 1, 3, 4, what they're telling me is the x values are 1, 3, and 4. So on my table, I'm going to plug in 1, 3, and 4. And because when they said domain, they're telling me what to put in the x values. They did not tell me the y values. So I need to calculate the y values. And I'm going to use this equation that they gave me. And we're going to plug it in just like when we were graphing. Okay, so for the first one, x is 1. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in y equals 2 times x plus 10. What is that? 2 plus 10, 12. So I'm going to get 12 when I plug it in. Okay, let me go ahead and plug in the next x value they gave me. The next domain value they gave me was x is 3. So now I'm going to plug the x of 3 into my equation. 2 times x plus 10. Okay, so I got 16 for my next y value. Okay, now one more y value, x value. They gave me x is 4. So x is 4, y equals 2 times x plus 10. So I got 18. Okay, so my table looks good. I plugged in 1, I got 12. I plugged in 3, I got 6. I plugged in 4, I got 18, which is why it's an input and an output. Now they're going to ask me to list my domain. Not my domain, my range. So range, remember, is the y values. So I have the y values right here. I just have to list them in order. So the lowest is 12, then 16, then 18. Okay, and I put them from lowest to highest, even if my table is not organized from lowest to highest. Okay, that one is a tricky one, so we're going to do one more just like that. So for example 7, it says y equals -5x plus 4. That's the rule I'm going to follow. For my domain, they are giving me -1, 0, and 3, and they want me to complete the table. Okay, so remember, domain is my x values. So they want me to put -1, 0, and 3 as my input or my x values. Okay, and then I'm going to plug my x values into the equation that they gave me to solve for y, which is this one right here. Okay, let me see. So let me plug in y equals -5. What's my first x value? -1. -5 times -1 is +5 plus 4, 9. So I get a 9 for that value. Let me plug in 0 next. Y equals -5 times 0 plus 4. -5 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 4 is 4. Okay, one more value. X is 3. 3 plus 4. So -15 plus 4, the answer, that's going to be a negative because the negative is bigger and I subtract, I get 11. So -11. So my table looks good. Okay, now the last thing they're going to ask me is what the range is. The range is the y values, which are these ones. And when I write them, remember, I have to put them lowest to highest. So I'm going to put the -11 first, even though it's not the first number in my table. Put the 4 next and the 9 next. And that's just because when I ask me my range, I put it lowest to highest. Whereas in my table, I make sure I match the x with the y value that it results in.